Welcome back to the channel. Are you ready to face your darkest fears? Tonight, we're diving into terrifying horror stories. From eerie whispers in the dark to the unsettling truth behind a barren road. Who's really waiting on the barren road? Let's find out, but don't say I didn't warn you. Detective Marcus Hall sat leaned over his desk, the dull glow of his desk lamp forming shadows that spread over the crowded room. Casually, his fingers hit on the case file before him. One more disappearance. Another day of ghost chasing. There was no mistaking the pattern, a string of individuals disappearing along an apparently typical street. Not only was it odd, it was frustrating, and the spooky nature of it all had grown as the investigation continued. Maria Sykes, a middle-aged woman out for a stroll, had been the first victim. She had been last seen standing next to a road crack, an odd, jagged line that swam across the asphalt like a scar on the ground. A college student was named Claire, the second victim, had vanished in the same way, by standing by the same road crack. Sarah Cruz, a retiree who had spent her whole life on this street, came next. There was no denying the pattern. Marcus went over the case notes once more as he pieced together the terrifying hypothesis that was starting to take shape in his head. There was more to the crack than merely a pavement defect. The key was in it. People vanished because of a slight, unexplainable phenomenon. However, why? What was the link? He sighed, moved his desk aside, picked up his coat, and walked for the street in question. The wind outside was biting, carrying with it an unnatural stillness that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. As he reached the street, the first thing that struck him was how normal it seemed. A quiet suburban neighborhood lined with trees, homes with well-kept lawns, and the occasional parked car. Nothing out of the ordinary. Yet, Marcus knew the truth now. Something was wrong with this place. Something beyond the grasp of human understanding. The crack in the road was waiting for him, its presence almost palpable. It ran down the center of the street, a jagged line that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. It was no longer just a crack in the pavement, it had become a symbol of something far darker. For a little period, Marcus stood there feeling the pressure of the case. A wave of dizziness struck him as he gazed at the fissure. For a brief moment, the street disappeared as the universe appeared to bend and twist around him. His hand reached out to support himself against a nearby tree as he staggered. His heart raced in his chest as if it were trying to escape, and his breath came in rough gasps. What on earth was going on with him? A strange, warped sight flashed before his eyes, a darker, more twisted parallel version of the street. The houses were rotten, the trees were withered, and the road crack was a pulsating, blazing wound in the ground. His hands were shaking as he stood back on the street once his vision cleared. What had he observed? Was it a vision? A hallucinations? Marcus? From behind him came a voice. He turned to see Detective Jane Carter, his partner, coming toward him. "You okay?" she inquired, her expression displaying worry. Marcus said, "I'm fine," but his tone faltered. "Just a bit lightheaded." "There's something wrong with this site." Jane looked at him for a while, then followed his eyes to the road crack. She scowled. "This crack? Isn't that where they all vanished?" Marcus nodded, his thoughts whirling. He still hadn't told anyone about his theory. He doubted that anyone would take him seriously. The street was a crack, a tear in the fabric of reality, and it had something to do with the failed government experiment that had occurred here decades before. But the truth was starting to emerge. An accident during a covert experiment had caused the rift to form back then, and now it was gradually engulfing individuals and drawing them into a different reality. Marcus whispered in a quiet voice, "I think we're dealing with something more than just a disappearance. This crack is more than just a road marking. It serves as a doorway." Jane's eyes got bigger. A gateway? Where to go? Somewhere else, perhaps a parallel dimension. And I believe that whatever is on the other side also wishes to take us. She didn't fall back despite her apparent terror in her eyes. "So what do we do?" Marcus remained silent for a while, thinking about the decision he would soon have to make. He was aware that he would be the next victim if they did not take immediate action and find a way to mend the divide. In his heart, he knew that his name was already inscribed in this street's sinister past. Marcus finally remarked, "I need to go inside," in a determined tone. "I must observe what lies beyond. We must put an end to this before it takes another victim." As he turned to approach the crack, Jane took hold of his arm. "No, Marcus, you have no idea what is out there. You never know what you might discover." With the weight of his decision pressing down on him, Marcus stared into her eyes. This was something he had to do, for those who are not present, for the truth, and maybe for his own life. He didn't say anything more and moved forward, putting his foot on the road crack. Everything around him appeared to fall apart. He dropped into the abyss as the ground beneath his feet shattered open, his body contorting in all directions as if gravity had lost all significance. He heard a high-pitched, annoying hum that seemed to pierce his mind, and his stomach lurched. Then everything halted as abruptly as it had started. Marcus was standing in the center of a distorted, dark image of the street. The dwellings were skeleton, with broken windows and no one inside. The trees had become dead and twisted. A thick, suffocating fog hung in the air, clinging to his skin like a cold sweat. He could hear murmurs in the distance, low, unintelligible sounds that seemed to emanate from everywhere. No longer was he alone. Pale, haggard figures with wide, terrified eyes arose from the darkness. The missing had been them, but now their souls were lost in the emptiness, locked here, between dimensions. One of them said in a faint, cracking voice, "Help us." A cold shiver went through Marcus. He was aware of his obligations. However, he had no idea how to fight it here. The decision fell heavily on him, and his mind was racing. How much would it cost him to try to mend the rift? Or he might venture farther into the unknown, knowing that he might never come back. Behind him, a throbbing light beckoned him from the fissure in the asphalt. Marcus inhaled deeply. Now he had no option. With a sorrowful heart, he whispered goodbye to the lost souls. Determined to close the crack permanently, or perish trying, he moved back toward it and stepped into it.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe the channel and see you in the next video.